This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
The champion, welcome, Danny Batten.
Hey guys, I'm Si. Welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the home of the Danny Batten Fight Show, powered by Violent Money. And of course, you can check out the Violent Money YouTube channel, VMTV on YouTube, of course. And please do check out Violent Money Academy on social media and Instagram, stuff like that. The first smart gym in the UK. And if you go to violentmoney.co.uk, you will also find all sorts of apparel and clothing and training equipment as well, geese, the lot. And you can use the code ACE20 to get yourself 20% off all their lovely gear. So please do that. Support our brand partners and our sponsors and the like. And tonight's show is sponsored by Heights Brain Care. Heights is the number one brain care brand in the world. What is brain care? Brain care is when you care for your brain. It doesn't get any simpler than that. It means caring for something that has been caring for you all your life, your brain. It's a movement, and it's all action behaviors that'll set you up for the life on your terms. Good nutrition, switching off, sleeping deeply, moving your body, and staying curious is the way it begins. Good brain care habits affect more than your brain. They have a knock-on effect on the rest of your life, including well-being, mental health, and physical health. We want to show people all the ways that they can practice good brain care and how they've already been doing it. It isn't a one-off. Forming habits and routines which incorporate brain care is essential to help your brain thrive every day. Heights Brain Care, the smart supplement, top-rated formula of 20 key vitamins and minerals, including vitamins D, C, B12, blueberries, omega-3, targets everything from poor sleep to brain fog and stress, so you feel better every day. The smart supplement combines the 20 highest quality nutrients for better brain health and mental well-being now and for the future. 2 capsules a day contain the ingredients that prove to improve sleep, energy, sharpen focus and memory, boost mood, and help to manage the stress. So you already probably invest a lot of time and energy in your skincare, your healthcare, your hair care. But what about your brain care? Prioritize what's in your head, just like you would prioritize what's on your head. Go to yourheights.com and start your brain care journey now. Guess you can use the code ACENation to get 10% off your first subscription. That's yourheights.com and the promo code ACENation. And of course, we thank them for sponsoring tonight's show. And away we go. That's the housekeeping out the way. And of course, I should mention, if you prefer your podcast in audio form, then we have this series and all the other content produced by A.C.E Podcast Nation available to you at the Sports Social Podcast Network. So do check them out. Give them a little follow, subscribe, all that stuff. Tell them we sent you, most importantly. But with no further ado, let's get into it. I am, as ever, joined by the one and only, the UK MMA legend, former world champion, Mr. Daniel Batten. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, sir, and listeners. Yeah, all good. Can't wait to talk about the UFC. There's some very interesting bouts on. And can we not get a sponsor with like minoxidil or Rogaine or something like something that cares for your hair? I want to grow back my hair. I want to have a mohawk. Always wanted one of them.
We need to get the old hair transplants on the go, isn't it?
Can give you some of mine. I've got loads.
That'll do it. I'm not too sure I'll suit a blonde, but I'll give it a try, I guess.
Well, you never know, mate. You never know. And as you will have heard there, Danny's voice didn't just change miraculously. We are joined by the purple supernova, the queen of the south, whatever you'd like to call her. She's the MMA flyweight, Kate I forgot it already. Bacik. I apologize. I'm terrible with names. It's really bad. How are you, Kate? You okay?
I'm all good. Thank you. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. And look forward to kind of letting our viewers and listeners and stuff get to know you a bit better. Obviously, you're very highly rated as it goes within combat sports communities, but particularly in the UK. And everyone who I've sort of spoken to over the last couple of weeks and said, "Oh, we've got Kate coming on," they've said, "Oh yeah, she's really good. She's going to be something special." So people think very highly of you.
That's nice to hear.
Is it true though? That's what I want to know. That's what I would like to know.
I mean, like, there must be some proof in it, but I feel like I'm still yet to prove myself, really.
I mean, and like it's the people, like the few different people who who you came up with in the conversation were also separate people. Like, you know, they weren't, you know, a part of the same team, or, you know, they were from separate places. So your name is definitely out there already. I know you were due to fight fairly recently, weren't you? And then was it called off quite late on?
Yeah, my last fight that didn't actually happen was, I think, Cage Warriors Southeast in March. I was scheduled to fight a girl from Norway, but she didn't make weight. So they let me know on like a 10 days notice. So I was kind of like hoping they're going to find someone else, because we're looking like literally every country in Europe. So I carried on my camp, I carried on the weight card, I made weight and all that, but no one really took that opportunity to fight. So it's kind of like I would say it was a wasted camp, but it wasn't, because I feel like I've improved loads in the process. And yeah, so it is what it is. I'm fighting in less than 2 weeks now, so I'm just focusing on that now.
Yeah, so like one of the things which when we've had female guests on before, I've asked, particularly when you're based sort of in the UK or Europe and you haven't quite made it to the UFC or Bellator or somewhere like that, is it a bit harder to get these matchups and these fights with people? Because it does, obviously, even though there's more and more women coming into the sports of mixed martial art, there isn't as many women doing it as there are men. So is it more difficult to get those matchups?
I mean, I believe so. There was a period of time of almost like 4 years, or like 3.5 years, where I couldn't get a single match. And it wasn't just MMA, it was even kickboxing and Muay Thai. I really struggled. Obviously, like striking is no longer my goal, but I was willing to take some fights just to stay active. And whichever fights I accepted, it didn't go through. And it got to a point that I just felt like, am I ever going to fight? So that's why I got so active with like pro grappling and all the pro grappling shows, just to keep myself active, just to keep busy, to do something. And obviously I finally fought after like literally 3.5 years in October. And then I thought, right, this is it. Okay, cool, I'm back. Like now I'm going to get some fights and stuff. And then ever since then, I haven't actually fought still. So I got matched so many times. But it's, I don't really know what the issue is, to be honest, because especially at like amateur, I was willing to fight both like bantamweight and flyweight. I want to stick to flyweight at pro, but at amateur doesn't really matter that much. So, across two quite busy divisions, not being able to find the fight or not being able to find someone to accept the fight, where my record is not really that great. I don't know. And I see other women are getting matches easily. But it's not just me. I know that there are a few other women that struggle to find fights even at pro. So there must be like a deeper issue here.
Yeah, it's a weird one, because it's got to be frustrating to be ready, and you do your camps and you have a fight and then it gets pulled. Danny, I can't remember who it was. We spoke to someone fairly recently who was in quite a similar position where their fights got pulled, pretty late on. and they had been, I can't remember who it was now, but you know, as a coach, Danny, for you, like obviously I know you've got Haley and a couple of others. Like, is it much harder to find matchups for the women than the men?
Yeah, no, it is. We can't be under no illusions with that. You know, it is difficult to get a matchup in the first place, and when they're back out trying to get a late replacement, it's not impossible unless you're at the top of the food chain in UFCs and Bellator and such places like that. Yeah, it is a problem, but I think Kate's doing the right thing in that she's spreading her bets and getting competitive experience both in the kickboxing, grappling, etc. I think this is sort of like making the best of a difficult situation. It won't be this way all the time. I think the world female MMA is doing nothing but expanding, and you can put a lot of that down to the fact that the women have been putting on some fantastic displays. And I think this is nothing but encouraging for other females to get involved with the sport. So it's just a case of keeping your head down, keep training, keep competing in any kind of formats that you can, and just make the best of a difficult situation. But yeah, it must be hard for you. You know, we had several late pullouts on the amateur event that I was at last night. I had 3 lads competing on there. But, you know, the amateur scene is really, really stacked. So, you know, you're pretty much going to get a late replacement pretty easily. But it can play a little bit of a head game as well with the students. I know the student that had a couple of replacements before we settled with one a week or so before his fight, it wasn't sitting too well with him because we was planning on a strike orientated fight, and then we end up going up against someone who's grapple heavy or wrestle heavy. So, you know, that can be difficult, but it's amateur. So, you know, I always say that amateurs don't matter in terms of your results, but amateurs are, for me, only matters in terms of building up a base and finding the weaknesses in your game. So I think as long as I keep that objective with the students, and I think that helps keep them positive and just take those fights and just keep stepping in there.
I think, yeah, you just in amateurs, I guess you're just trying to keep learning, aren't you? And you're trying to keep improving and make your skills more broader, better. Like, it's kind of interesting though, because is it and I'll put this to you, Kate, first. Do you think is it like a UK and Europe problem where females are struggling to get fights until they hit a certain level? Or is it just a case of, obviously in America, it's so big and there's so many states, which means there's so many more fighters. So it's just easier for larger continents or larger countries to pick from a vaster array and number of fighters?
I think so. Obviously, states are like number one when it comes to MMA, and as you said, there's so many states in the US that you can probably source someone from another state with no problem. And there are so many really good gyms, so many people training that I can't imagine there'll be a massive issue to find replacements there. But obviously, UK is a little bit different, or maybe even Europe. There aren't that many people fighting, and especially like women-wise, like there aren't that many. And a lot of times, especially at amateur level, that also comes down to the promotion, maybe not being able to get fighters from abroad, because obviously that's extra costs. So it depends on the sponsors and how much money is involved in the show. Sometimes it's a lot easier to just drop the fight altogether than to, you know, schedule another flights and hotels for someone else again. But yeah, I don't know, to be honest.
Danny, is there anything which the kind of the organizers, the boards, whatever, the people at the top of MMA in the UK can do to improve the situation?
You can't just, you know, pluck women from the street to compete. You know, they've got to be in some kind of, you know, regular training, and there's just not enough of them. You know, that's literally the crux of the matter. That it really is.
But then, can I just on that, mate? Like you look at the UFC and Bellator, maybe UFC more so. Like they don't seem to have a shortage of, like, every year we see new Eastern European women coming in there. You know, there's a couple of UK women in there as well. So there is women out there somewhere. Is it a case of that on the UK shows maybe they don't want to fly people in as much, or is it just a case that there's maybe not the funding there?
It's just expensive, isn't it? And predominantly a lot of the female fighters that we have in UK and in Europe don't have very big records. So, it's just one of those very, very difficult scenarios and difficult situations. And what you also got to understand is for those women that do start making or showing some capabilities of fighting, UFC and Bellator and those big shows are sort of like that's just sucking them up. It makes it very, very difficult for other promotions to have any kind of depth in any of the weight divisions. We're just in an evolutionary state at the moment with the female MMA. I have no doubts that it's going to grow to be as big as the men's division. I absolutely have no doubt about that. In fact, we've both been real fans of watching the female bouts, haven't we, Si? I take great interest. I think, largely you're going to get better bang for your buck regards watching a display of mixed martial arts, watching the females go at it, partly because, there's going to be less of knockouts. Now, I understand people like to watch knockouts and they like to watch submissions to completion, but the women seem to not want to tap no matter how hard their arm bends. And, because they do have a little less power, they have such good pocket fights. I mean, women definitely have something to offer the world of MMA that men just can't, if you know what I mean. Men and women, they give something slightly different. And like I say, I think men are more finish orientated, and there is going to be those crowds that love that. But we also love those wars of nutrition that women seem to bring. So look, with this kind of thing going on, I think it is going to put good grounding there for female MMA to expand. At the end of the day, it's just a process that we have to go through. It's just a little unfortunate for people like Kate. It's not so easy, not so straightforward. But like I said, we just have to make best of a difficult situation. But it's a difficult situation that we can trust that's going to get better. And that's something to smile about, to be honest.
Yeah, and I guess, Kate, you've got places like where we've got places like Danny's Gym, BST. You've got New Wave Academy, and you've got British Top Team. All these, they're in Violent Money. There's so many different gyms and academies now where, in a few years, and even Shore MMA, I know there's a few female fighters down here who are not far off, progressing and going that next step. But again, are they going to be then in the same situation that Kate can find herself in and that others have found themselves in, where they turn pro and the fights aren't there? So I guess, yeah. But
I think that there's a lot of shows abroad now, and like the women that are like pretty decent pro fighters in the UK now, they seem to be quite active on them shows in abroad. Like obviously likes of like Melissa Mullins and Dakota, like they seem to be doing quite well abroad, and there are opportunities out there. So even if it's not in the UK, there's definitely something happening somewhere. So there is hope.
Yeah, no, and I think like Danny said, like quite often the female fights can be more entertaining than some of the men's fights, and I think part of the reason for that is that in the men's fights they sometimes, I mean, maybe it's the numbers thing working the other way, whereby because there's so many male fighters, if you don't put on a good fight or you make a mistake or you lose, you can quite often lose your spot. Whereas with the females, like if you look in the UFC, the female divisions, they're pretty deep, but they're not anywhere near as deep as the men's divisions. So I think there's a bit more comfort in that. Or if I lose, if I've got a 3-fight contract or whatever it may be, if I lose this one, I'm not just going to get dropped or into, I'm not going to have to fight as hard to get onto another card. So you often see these really close fights where both female fighters will be going at it from the bell to bell in every single round. And that's, by the way, that's not to say, that it's just a dog fight where they're just striking. You see some really highly technical female bouts. Some of the best fights we've watched over the last couple of years, in my opinion, have been the female fights in the UFC. There was that one, was it? I always forget who it was. It was Zhang Weili and someone. That's it. Yeah. That was one of the best fights I've ever seen, and like it wasn't just a war; it was technically good as well. And I think it's almost as if sometimes the pressure's it's off the female fighters in some ways, in that because the divisions aren't as deep, it means that they're not as I don't want to say afraid, but they're not as concerned about losing their spots maybe to other fighters, because obviously if you've got 100 fighters in your division and you don't entertain, or you lose a couple of fights, there's 99 fighters behind you who can take your place. Kate, what's your ambition in terms of MMA? Like, where would you like to see yourself go to?
So obviously now that I'm gonna enter like the pro ranks soon, I want to give myself kind of like 2 to 3 years to actually end up where I want to be, so which is obviously UFC. That's what I'm aiming for. If there's something else that's gonna, pop up and it's gonna be a better opportunity for whatever reason, then obviously I might change my goal. But in the last like 6 years that I've been training like full time, that's always been like my main goal, and something that I've been aiming to, reach at some point. So I think in the next 3 years, that's perfectly doable. I think if I fight frequently enough, if I'm out there, if I'm planning on fighting abroad most likely, because that's where the opportunities seem to be more often than not. And then obviously that's going to give me some exposure. That's going to give me some opportunities to train good gyms and to get my name out there. And then I'm just going to keep grinding until I get to that UFC and climb up the ranks.
And I mean, in some ways, you've that sort of turning pro and making that push has come at quite a good time for you, because I know you mentioned the UFC, but obviously you've got one championship who have just signed that deal, haven't they, with Amazon. You've got PFL have got a deal with Channel 4. You've got Bellator, who are obviously on BBC, and then you've got the UFC on BT. So like all of a sudden in the UK, and obviously Cage Warriors is on UFC Fight Pass. So all the major companies in the world, they're all on what I would call very accessible TV in the UK. Like, you haven't got to go searching for, God knows what streams and pay-per-views on the internet, because they're all, most people have got Amazon, most people have got Channel 4, BBC, or everyone really. So, I mean, if you can get opportunities in those companies, and they're all paying more in line, I think, with what fighters should be paying, or certainly getting closer to it than perhaps they were a few years ago. So there is opportunities there for fighters, Kate. Do you think? Like, it's a good time to go in?
I mean, like, if you were to ask me the same question about a couple of years ago, I'd say that like I'd like to fight on Cage Warriors and through Cage Warriors get to UFC. But obviously things have changed. I don't even see any women fighting on Cage Warriors anymore. There isn't women's division. I've attended a couple of Cage Warriors shows this year, and it's just sad to see that there's not a single female fight on any of the cards. And it's not that we don't have women fighting in the UK, because we do, and they all need fights. So it just doesn't make sense, because obviously they used to have really good female fighters, putting on a show. So many of them made it to UFC or like any other bigger shows. So I don't understand why they dropped it.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I'm just going to have a quick look, actually, to see when the last female fight was on Cage Warriors, because obviously we've seen some big name. Molly McCann fought on Cage Warriors. A friend of the show, Corey McKenna, she fought on Cage Warriors. There's been a few, like even Joanna Jędrzejczyk fought on there as well. So it's, and like you say, there are fighters out there, so it seems strange. One thing I have noticed over the pandemic, probably, and over the last couple of years, Danny, is Cage Warriors seems to have reduced their prelims. You don't really see any prelims on like YouTube or the Cage Warriors website anymore. Whereas before you would, you'd get 3 or 4 fights on the website or on YouTube. Whereas now you tend to get, I think, 1, maybe 2 fights on the prelims. Do you think that's more of a cost-cutting thing just because of the pandemic and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know the business side of promoting to know for sure, really. But I think it's very, very important to constantly push at the grassroots. You want to create new stars and new standouts. So I think it's very, very important to push on the prelims. And likewise, I think it's really sad that we ain't seeing female bouts on Cage Warriors anymore. I mean, it has been a while. And something that I've said before about UFC, I think that they should be headlining onto the main card more of the female bouts, even though, okay, they might not be up there always technically because they don't have the skill depth wise, but I think they should be promoting it harder and stronger so that you can get the attraction of more females coming into this sport. I just think they're going about it in a way that's going to make it progress slower than it potentially could. But, that's just an opinion of mine. I don't know enough about the business world to really know. Whether there's business reasons, financial reasons why that they can't push it as hard as what I would hope anyway.
Yeah. I did hear a rumor. I'd be interested to know if you've heard the same rumor, Danny, actually, from sort of circles within MMA. But I heard a rumor from someone who would probably have a good idea at least. And they said that there's plans to have a UFC show in Liverpool towards the end of this year with Paddy main eventing and Molly McCann as a co-main event, which I think would be massive for for female fighters. But also that means that I would imagine they'd want Molly McCann to win her next fight, which is on the UFC London card, and I think she's fighting someone pretty good. But equally so, I think those two would sell out a Liverpool arena easily. Like Paddy was selling out a Liverpool arena back in Cage Warriors, wasn't he? Years ago. So I mean. From that side of things, I don't think he'd have any problems, even if he was to lose at the next show. Kate, tell us a bit about your sort of beginning into martial arts and your the early days for Kate Bacik, like when you were a child and growing up and stuff, and what was life like for you then?
I mean, I was born in Poland and I grew up in Poland. I spent my childhood in Poland and pretty rough area. And I've always been a pretty scrappy, annoying kid with ADHD, just trying to fight everyone all the time, being told off by everyone. And then it just kind of carried on. And then obviously I had two brothers as well. One younger, one older. My older brother, he trained Muay Thai at some point, and I remember when he started training, he started beating me up more. And then I got into Muay Thai eventually. I think when I was 17, one of my friends just dragged me to the gym because we just used to go to like football matches and like fight there, and like go into like some abandoned like buildings and stuff and just fight like 20 people and 20 people and just just for fun, Sunday afternoon kind of leisure thing. So at some point one of my friends was like, "Oh, just come with me to my Muay Thai gym and like I think it'd be pretty good. Just give it a go, see how you feel." So I went there and I got beaten up by about like 20 massive like Polish guys on steroids. And then obviously I decided I need to come back because I can't leave it like that. And then I kept coming back. So that was like 12, 13 years ago. And I did Muay Thai for quite a while. I had a little break for a couple of years because of my health, but I think my first fight was like 3 months into training, and it was against someone pretty decent, someone who's been like fighting for 3 years. So it's a bit of a shock to the system. I remember she just like it went to a decision. I lost decision, but she just kept clinching, and I've never done clinch work before, so I just kept dropping to my knees because I didn't know even how to posture up or anything. It was a really annoying fight. And then like 6 years ago, I decided to do a bit of MMA because I just ended up watching loads of like UFC and like all sorts of MMA fights. And I really got into it. But obviously I had like no jiu-jitsu, no wrestling. So I ended up training jiu-jitsu and wrestling. And then I remember I had like kind of like an amateur fight in Cyprus. That was the first kind of proper one. Otherwise it was just tournaments. And at that point I was still kind of thinking like, oh, I can just use my striking. Like I don't really have to grapple that much. That this is good enough. And then I ended up like taking myself down, and in the end I submitted myself. I broke my own arm, and I ended up escaping a submission wrong way. And I knew it was the wrong way, but I was just stubborn. And that was the fight that made me get into jiu-jitsu and like wrestling properly, because I realized I've got a lot of work. And I initially planned to just take a year out of MMA. And focus on my grappling, but that year became like 3.5 years just because I couldn't get fights. So then I kind of reached a certain level with my grappling that I was happy with, well, more happy than before. And I decided it's a good time to get back into MMA, and here we are, kind of.
Yeah. Do you idolize anyone? Is there a female that you, or a male for that matter? Is there someone that you not necessarily emulate, but someone you admire and you watch and you're a fan of more than anyone else?
I mean, I love different styles, and I kind of like take a little bit out of everything. So I see something I like, and I try to implement it into my training, or I get inspired by it. But if I was to pick one female fighter, one female fighter that like, I think I'd like to fight in the future. I think I like the style. I would like to fight like them. It must be Valentina Shevchenko. Just because of how well-rounded she is. Obviously, her Muay Thai is like world level. Her grappling is amazing. Her wrestling is amazing. I don't think she's lacking anywhere, and her toughness as well. And you know, she's just an amazing athlete as well, amazing fighter. Yeah, I think she's my favorite.
Yeah. Did you see her last fight that she had? The one she got pushed really close. How did you feel that? Because it's the first time I think we've all seen her.
Yeah, I think it was the first time I was genuinely in trouble. Yeah, it was an interesting fight. But that's the thing, is MMA, anything can happen, no matter how good you are. You can have a bad day. Like same with Amanda Nunes. Everyone like idolized her so bad, and then you know her last fight, like I don't even know what to think about it. But there's so many factors to it. You know, sometimes it could be just a bad day. Maybe your cut went wrong. Maybe you never recovered from that cut. There's so many things, you know, like physically and mentally that can get in the way and affect your performance. So it's easy to judge someone from the other side of the screen, but obviously, like you being a fighter as well, like you know how it goes. Sometimes you just got a bad day.
And what would you appreciate more if you're watching a bout? Would you appreciate a really clever setup knockout, or would you prefer to see a complex transition with a submission on the end finish? What's your?
I think
what makes you lick your lips when you're watching the MMA, basically? Because I love a good old complex chain of events leading into a submission.
Yeah, like obviously that's good to see as well. But a nicely timed knockout, like even like Molly McCann's last fight, that spinning elbow, it was just like the timing, the precision, like everything was just in the right place. And like to see something like this, it's also exciting. So I can't pick one. I obviously love good grappling actions leading to a nice submission. But a sick knockout is also good.
Yeah. So I do always appreciate a knockout, but sometimes I think a knockout can happen, just in a blind flurry.
It depends who you fight as well. Like if you're fighting a striker and you manage to knock them out, that's amazing. If you're fighting a grappler and you submit them, that's also amazing.
Yeah, I just think, like I said, with the knockouts, they can just happen even if the intent wasn't to knock them out. You're just exchanging shots and you clip them and you get an unexpected reaction from it. But the thing I think I love about the submission is it's a very sure-footed process. So very, very rarely will you just fall in a position to be like, oh, look, there's an arm there. I mean, it does happen, but I think there's so much clear artistry in setting up that submission. I think when people are watching it, even if they're reasonably uneducated, when they jump on the neck and start trying to ring it, they know it's either going to be a rear-naked choke or a form of a guillotine or a darce, etc., etc. But that's not to say I don't appreciate a good knockout. I absolutely love watching a good war. But I can't help but love the direct approach of the grappling.
Yeah, it's also so much more difficult to land a submission in MMA, where you've got and everything's super sweaty and slippery as well, and using the forward views on more tired, because obviously like the pace, the intensity of say if it was a grappling bout is completely different to an MMA bout. So it's a lot easier to land a submission when you're just grappling than when you had to go for like 5-minute war and this is your third round. You've been there for like 13 minutes or whatever, and like it's not going to be that easy to get that submission.
Sure.
Kate, you mentioned fighting at the football when you were younger. What football team do you support?
At the moment, none. I haven't actually followed
did you follow? Who did you follow back in the day?
Back in the day, I was just like a local Polish team.
Okay.
It's crazy with the Polish contingent that we have at the gym, but there's numerous people that was previously involved in football hooliganism, as we would call it here in the UK. It seems like a standard thing. It's like, well, you go to watch the football and enjoy that, but then you're going equally to enjoy a good old punch up afterwards. It seems like just a done thing in Poland. I mean, is it really that widespread? Or are we just misconstruing it here? Yeah, it's just craziness.
Back in the day, at least.
Okay, would you say that's happening less now than it did in the past?
I don't know. I haven't actually, I haven't really been involved with anything in Poland for like 12, 13 years now, so I don't really know. But I can assume things didn't change that much, right?
It's still about, isn't it? I
Trees
think
in
it's just from what I know, like in Eastern Europe generally, like it's a lot more organized. So like you might have like two sets of fans or whatever from two clubs, and they'll go and meet somewhere
Yeah.
away from, like a city center or something like that, away from people, and they'll just scrap it out with equal numbers. So is what it is, I suppose, isn't it? Was there, so do you feel like, Kate, that your striking is your sort of bread and butter, your sort of go-to in terms of when you're fighting, or over the last couple of years where you've built up the rest of your skills, are you equally as confident in those?
I like to think of myself as well-rounded. And the thing is, like, if I do too much grappling, I end up missing a striking. If I do too much striking, I end up missing grappling. So I need to kind of keep it balanced. Also, I love wrestling, just like freestyle wrestling is another thing that I really enjoy doing. So I try to mix it up as much as I can. And it also depends who I'm fighting. Like, obviously, my camp is gonna look different depending on who I'm fighting. Like, my last opponent for that title at Cowboy Southeast, she was a judo black belt, very high level judo black belt. So my kind of game was obviously to keep it striking and just kind of like anti-judo stuff, like like anti-judo wrestling, stuff like that. Whereas now my opponent, I think she comes from like a Muay Thai background, so I still want to keep it standing, but I need to kind of adjust my game a little bit differently. And I know if I need to, I can obviously go back to my grappling because it's going to be better than hers. So again, it really depends on like who I'm fighting and what I'm preparing for. But recently, I've like kind of fallen in love again with striking. I started training with Daniel Sam in Wildfires in East London, and that kind of like, I don't know, that gave me that spark again. Like I really like got into my Thai and kickboxing again. I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, this is kind of like my focus at the moment.
And did you say you've got a fight coming up?
Yeah.
So when's that fight?
It's on Fight Star in London, Crystal Palace, 15th of July against some girl from Belgium.
Okay, that's not too far at all, is it?
Yeah,
that's like a couple of weeks.
exactly.
So I suppose you're looking forward to getting back into it after a break.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's the thing. Like obviously, like I haven't really had a break. Like I've been in a constant fight camp ever since. It's just those fight camps never led to a fight, but I'm kind of used to it over years. That's how it's been. It's just like back-to-back fight camps and cats and painful fights never happen. So obviously, it's gonna feel nice to finally have a fight in the end of all of that.
Yeah, you said about training different formats. You've gone back into your striking. Do you have an MMA coach as such? Have you got someone that sort of you look up to as being your main coach?
Yeah, so at the moment I'm training probably in like 5-6 different gyms. I like to mix it up and just like find different coaches for different things. But obviously like my base is at New Wave, and that's where I've got my MMA coach Tommy, who's kind of like the brain behind everything. And he, like, I'm doing my MMA sessions mostly with him. So he's kind of like the one who comes up with a game plan and like work specific techniques with me and like make specific adjustments and stuff. But the rest of the time, I'm pretty much just doing my own thing, kind of being my own CEO. And like obviously, I'm doing my striking with Daniel Sam. I'm doing my grappling with London Grapple mostly, and I just like mix it up. But yeah, I think Tommy is like the brain behind the MMA bit of it, like link it all up together.
Sure.
Good stuff. I'm still looking to try and find the most recent female fight on Cage Warriors. Needless to say, that the fact that I'm still looking probably 10 minutes later means that it's been a very long time. So I know Molly McCann fought on like Cage Warriors 90, but there doesn't seem to have been a great deal of fight. I'm sure there has been one or two, which I
know that Lanchana Green fought as well on Cage Warriors. That was like quite a few years ago. What else? Bryony Tyler as well. Like there was quite a few females, but obviously now I don't even know how many years ago that was. Probably like 2018.
Yeah, it's disappointing, isn't it, that they haven't focused more on that, because there is fighters out there. I know there's a Cage Warriors show in Wales coming up in August the 13th, And Danny, we were just talking about the prelims and the importance of them and stuff. I know they're having several amateur fights on the prelims in that for that, because I've seen the posts asking, which amateurs want to be matched up and stuff. So that's a good sign that maybe it was a pandemic thing, that they were kind of, that they had to make the cards a bit more streamlined, and that, now that everything's well and truly opened back up, they'll kind of make those prelims a bit bigger. And hopefully we, with that in mind, we can then get some females on those Cage Warrior shows, because I do think that's, it's noticeable, I think, Danny, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm just thinking, how could it be good to move forward, sort of thing, to try to inject a lot more female interest, not just as viewers of MMA, but actually participating in it. And I think it'd be really fantastic to one day be hearing on a regular basis about female coaches. It's all very well having female competitors, but I think some of the deterrent of females starting, I mean, not for everyone, certainly not, but I think a large deterrent is the fact that you're going to go to an MMA gym largely full of men training and with a male coach. Not that should be a deterrent, but it will be for some. In fact, many probably. So, and I would love nothing more than to see, female coaches. I mean, they're just as capable of men at producing fight teams, and I'd love nothing more than to see that. And I think that'll be a permanent changing point, I think, in MMA once you reach that sort of level. So, you never know. Kate might be the first one. Who knows? There might be some female coaches out there. I don't actually know.
Definitely loads. I'm coaching, I'm a coach. I've been coaching. Right. I've had a little MMA team in Brighton, then I moved to London.
Oh, wow, okay.
As well. So, we out there, but obviously, like, it's not that, like, widespread as well. And there will always be more, like, male coaches than female anyways. It's just like, with fighters, there are more guys fighting than women, and it's going to stay this way. You see, it's a difficult sport. Not every woman wants to do it, so that's never really going to change. But I think it's going to become more, like, widely acceptable, and it's going to be received better soon.
Yeah, and when you say your teacher, is that for women, or you're just coaching anyone?
I don't actually like teaching women's only classes. I've done that a few times. I've done that in Brighton. I've done that when I used to coach in Cyprus, like Philippines, like here as well. But the thing with that is there's a lot of excitement, and there's a lot of interest at first, and then the numbers just drop drastically, and in the end the classes just die out. And I also think, like, obviously you kind of need different types of bodies, and it's different sparring with women, it's different sparring with guys, and you kind of need both to like make this a complete fighter. So I don't think splitting, like, men and women is a good idea. Like, obviously, to be inclusive, you've got to, like, include everyone. Right. So I'm a big fan of mixed classes, and just having different coaches taking them classes.
Yeah, another question I want to ask you, Kate, and you don't have to answer this. It could be too uncomfortable for people to answer, but you talk about having difficulties finding opponents. What if you had the opportunity to fight someone that was trans? Would this be something you would say no to? It's a topic that we spoke about. Yeah,
it's a difficult question. I don't know. I think that would depend on who that person be, right? It's hard to say if it's just if it's just a hypothetical. But I don't know. I think, like, there should be a separate division, in my opinion. There should be a separate division, because it's kind of unfair, like, biologically, I think. But
because there are many debates, isn't there?
So one thing I'm interested in, Kate, actually, obviously, so you, I would assume you've sparred with men at different times to help with your training and stuff. Like, how big is the difference when you train with a male and a female who are at a similar sort of level in terms of their, purple belt and this and that and whatever? So, like, how big a difference is there, or is there a difference?
I mean, the differences are there, obviously, like, even in terms of, like, I think men have, like, faster reaction time than women, but then women have, like, higher pain threshold, they're more flexible, and they're going to be faster and more technical usually, but then guys are more explosive, they're stronger, They maybe don't fatigue as easily. I don't know. There's loads of like little differences that add up. So obviously there will be differences. So you have to spar differently. Like even just the flexibility thing, like taken out of all of it, it's a big thing, especially when it comes to grappling. Like women just come across as tougher, but that's mostly due to flexibility as well. They can go further, and because the pain threshold level is a lot higher than men, again that adds up. But then again, like obviously elements of like explosion and reaction time and all that helps. And you can spar with 60-kilo woman and a 60-kilo guy, and the guy is going to feel stronger. There's no doubt about it,
Interesting. What a question to put on Kate right at the end, mate. That was like.
Hey, come on, she goes to football events and fights. 20 guys. I thought, right, I'm going to put this one on her.
Yeah, no, it's just one of them questions, isn't it? Which is just like, it's difficult when it's hypothetical as well. I think
that's the thing.
You make a very good point, Kate. Like if it was, like if someone offered you a fight with a certain person, then it's easier to say yes, no, and if you say no,
knowing me, I'd probably take it anyways.
I knew it.
Are you one of these fighters who kind of just says yes to every fight?
I mean, I did have a Muay Thai fight against the guy before, just because I showed up to a tournament, and then I realized that all of the women in my division pulled out on the day. And then I was just so pissed that I asked the promoter to like just let me fight guys, and because he didn't want to do that, he was like, "Oh, let's do an exhibition bout." So he was that guy, and we just had like 3-round exhibition bout. Just all right. But then obviously he was like 17 or something. He was heavier and like taller than me a little bit. But like I remember his coach came up to me and he was like, his mum is watching, like she doesn't have him. He put it on me. I was like, shit, I've got to kind of match it, but without like putting it on him too much so it doesn't look too bad.
That's good. I like that. Okay, Kate. Thank you ever so much for joining us. I really appreciate
Thanks
your time.
for having me.
And you're definitely welcome back anytime. Best of luck with your fight in a couple of weeks. If people want to watch that, they can go to the Fight Star website, and you can order the pay-per-view for Fight Star Championship. And it is, I will put the link in the comments now. It's $12.99, July 15th, 7:00 start. Fight Star Championship featuring Kate Bacik. I think I said that right, as well as many other fights. So put that in calendar. Support MMA in the UK is what I say, and buy the shows. But best of luck with your fight, Kate. And like I said, we'll keep in touch, and we'll definitely catch up with you further down the line.
All right. Thanks for having me on the show.
Good luck, Kate. Good luck.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Good show. Good stuff. Do enjoy having these guests, all different levels, mate, all different like places and different places in their careers and stuff like that as well. But like Kate is like a few people are. It just in passing said, "Oh, we got Kate on the show this week," and like very, very highly rated within the sort of MMA scene, as it were. So
yeah, she goes
on.
A physical specimen as well. She's very well muscled, clearly trains very, very hard. I'm sure she's going to be making some impacts.
Brutal striker.
Yeah.
Proper. Right there, mate. Before we go into UFC from last night, which was a good show, I wanted to talk a little bit about Donald Cerrone has retired from mixed martial arts. Talk to me a little bit about his impact on the sport generally, and also just his overall career, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he's had an amazing career. Predominantly, people know him as someone who's willing to stand and bang. I think that's a good description of what Donald Cerrone is all about. But as his career evolved, people start to realise that this guy can actually wrestle and grapple some too. He really was well-rounded. He always just enjoyed to stand and predominantly bang. And he certainly gave us that experience and more time again. He really, really did. I think a lot of people, when they mention his name, would fall into the trap of thinking he was some kind of journeyman. He was a bit more than a journeyman. He was just someone that would take a fight on a show, not short notice, because he was predominantly always in shape. You know, the guy clearly loved the environment and the sport of MMA to a point where this kid was always in shape. Yeah, I mean, he's just incredible personality for the sport, a real man's man, but with a good heart. You know, when you saw him do his little retirement bit, you know, he had his kids there. You know, he's a family man. You know, it's just great what he's done. And I'm glad he's got out when he did. I mean, perhaps could have retired a few fights before the one that we saw him in last night, to be honest. But it was nice how he put it. You know, when he said he's just not loving it anymore. But you could tell he loved it, because sometimes we'd see him fight several times in 1 month.
Yeah,
so clearly had enough for it. But yeah, but look, he's moving on to, you know, other things. I don't want to say necessarily better, but he's going through a different era of his life, and that's seemed to be evolving into the form of being an actor. I think it's great what he's doing. Clearly a man who strives and drives has got to have some objective in his life. It was MMA for many, many years, and now it's transitioning into being an actor, and I wish him all the best with that. He will definitely be a Hall of Famer. I mean, you know, he said, I hope to be a Hall of Famer, as if it's some kind of question. If anyone's going to be deserving of being a Hall of Famer without question, it's Donald Cerrone.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the other thing is, it would have been nice in some ways if they'd been able to give him that announcement there and then, in some ways, wouldn't it? Like, you know, as he announced his retirement, they could have announced it. But obviously, I know that maybe the UFC wasn't aware beforehand, perhaps, that, you know.
Well, you know, that would be a bit sad, to be honest, because that would be like killing two birds with one stone, so to speak. Let's let him have his retirement, let that sink in.
Yeah.
Then you can have another celebration, you know, of his career when he becomes a Hall of Famer.
Good shout, mate. UFC last night. What did you think of it?
Some great bouts. Yeah, really enjoyed it. You know, it was good seeing Ian Gary put up another performance. Had a couple of close shaves in his fight against that Gabby Green. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Gabby Green was, you know, fairly good. Another little step up in competition for Ian Gary. You could tell that Ian Gary's evolving and improving himself. Showed some great takedown capabilities as well as striking capabilities. We knew he was a decent striker. I sometimes got a little uncomfortable watching Ian Gary fight on the outskirts as much as he does. I think there'll be some fighters as he steps up the ranks that will take full advantage of that and perhaps press the takedowns on him as well. So I do think that that's something for him to either think about if he continues that kind of style, or maybe to try to change that. Yeah, I'm not too sure if that's the right sort of strategy and tactics to be portraying and continuing to try and move up the ranks. I just think there's too many wrestle heavy guys that would take full advantage of him having his back up against the fence as close as he does. But he's facing someone who probably wanted to bang with him. But a good performance, you know. Ian Gary's now 10-0. I mean, it's what an impressive record.
Yeah, yes, indeed. It's going to be interesting what they say. Did you see the first fight on the ladies? Did you see that armbar?
No, I did not.
Dislocated her shoulder. Oh my god!
Oh, really?
So Julia Stolienko defeated Jessica Rose Clark via submission, in 42 seconds. And she had the armbar on pretty much for the whole 42 seconds. Like, she got it on very early and she just wouldn't tap. And then all of a sudden, she just frantically tapped because her shoulder.
Right, so it broke. Yeah, this is what I mean. The women don't seem to want to tap from these submissions till it's gone too far. But, you know, it might be down to what Kate was saying. The pain threshold of a female is.
Where do you stand on that, Dan? Because so many fighters I know will just say, I'd rather go to sleep than tap. And even we saw it with Jack Shaw's most recent fight in London when he was in serious peril for a little bit. He was never going to tap. He was going to go to sleep over tapping. Like, where do you stand on saving yourself from long-term injury or going to sleep and tapping if you know you can't get out of it? As a coach.
You know, being put to sleep is not going to harm you unless someone continues to hold it way longer than they should. Going out of a bit of oxygen to the brain ain't going to damage you unless it's for a long duration. But the referee's there to keep you safe on that front. I think it's much better to hold on to a choking situation and go asleep than it is to hold on to an armbar and have your elbow dislocated or your forearm snapped, because that could be, horrific.
You can get complications and all sorts.
Yeah.
Of it,
Yeah, absolutely. It can be an ongoing thing. I know this firsthand, witnessing it with Tom Mearns and also Lucas Klinger, who recently went out in Poland. A fighter that went out to Poland with, that we have briefly spoke about, he dislocated his arm in training almost exactly the same way as Tom Mearns done his elbow. Now, elbows can be done not just with a takedown, but obviously with an armbar or an Americana, bent elbow lock, or another variation, Kimura lock. They can all displace that elbow and shoulder. And, sometimes you never make a full recovery. You're never 100% afterwards, even with surgery. So, yeah, going to sleep, it might look dramatic. It might seem scary when someone's laying there limp, but it's predominantly never dangerous. But the arm locks, leg locks, yeah, they can be proper nasty. I mean, look at the submission that Stevie Ray put on Pettis. That was like a spine stroke neck crank. Yeah, I mean,
what did Tom call it? What did he call it?
It's like a
reverse
twister. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that could have been horrific if he chose not to tap. I mean, that was twisting his spine at the hip, and it just looked awful. It looked horrific. But I do wonder whether, if we do get injuries like this occur more often through not tapping out from submissions till it's too late, whether we will have referees step in to protect the combatant.
But what can they do? They can't call it. Well, I suppose they can, can't they? They just same as striking, isn't it? If they think the fighter's not defending themselves, but that's a really difficult thing to call, isn't it? Whereby,
it is.
If you've got an armbar on, they could be still working to get out of it, and you want to stop it before it breaks, and then the fighter gets annoyed because they're like, "Well, I was still trying to get out of it." Opens up all sorts of potential issues, I guess, is the right word.
Yeah, it could end up with some more heavy arguments regards refereeing if they start stepping in, I guess. I think maybe if someone's in a horrific shoulder lock scenario, say, and there is no roads to getting out of it, and it's just being cranked on, and they ain't trying to scramble it, they're just trying to sit it out to the end of time, I think perhaps it could be the place of a referee to step in. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Like I say, I think it would only possibly happen if we started seeing an occurrence of injuries on a more frequent basis. I think you're more likely to see these injuries occur with the females than you are the males. It might be a bit misjudgment, but it does seem that the females just either take more pain or just more bendy before it gives way. I just don't know. But they just seem to let those arms and shoulders crank round to degrees that are hard to watch for me anyway.
Yeah, no one wants to see someone getting their arm or leg broken, do they? We've seen a couple of leg breaks from shin clashes and but no one wants to see that. And just as much as we don't want to see the freak leg injuries, we obviously don't want to see arm bars with.
No, I mean,
arms.
Look,
I understand that it can happen.
Yeah, it can happen. It's a combat sport. Look, you get horrific injuries with show jumping and horse racing and so on. But in a combat sport where two combatants are doing full contact, you're going to expect sometimes it's going to be a little distasteful to watch. It's just going to be that way. But we have a choice: take away that entertainment completely for the safety of the humanity, or we have humanity, and you're going to have to just face the occasional consequence. In which case you wouldn't have anything, including Formula One. Sometimes in Formula One, in training or in the race itself, unfortunately, things do go wrong from time to time, and there are fatalities or horrific injuries. Life wouldn't be life without taking a risk or two. And I think we should just sit comfortable with just trying to keep that to a minimum and just letting it be to a point.
Indeed, mate. Right. So, main card. The first fight ended in no contest. We had Pedro Munhoz, ranked number 9, versus Sean O'Malley in the bantamweight division, ranked 13. This was a big one because if Sean O'Malley got a win, it was looking, really good. And eye poke, and I saw a lot of people complaining, saying that it didn't even hit him in the eye and this and that. Where do you stand on this fight?
Yeah, I mean, clearly it went to the eye. I think we've seen worse looking ones where you see the actual finger insert into the skull, literally. This one seemed to be skimming the eye, but who's to say it didn't push eyelashes in? Just don't know. I hope Pedro Munhoz wouldn't, back out of continuing the fight, considering he was actually doing very well. I mean, we've seen Sean O'Malley make a mockery of people with his striking, literally make a mockery. That wasn't happening. Pedro Munhoz was clearly working a very, very good game plan in that he was targeting O'Malley's legs, particularly the outside, maybe because of seeing that, he's lost because of a leg injury and thinking there could be a weakness there. I'm sure O'Malley didn't show that there was going to be any risk of the fight being stopped due to those leg kicks. So clearly there's no weakness in his legs any more than anyone else. But I think it was working out very, very well that whenever Sean O'Malley was switching up his stance, Pedro Munhoz was matching his size, mirroring it basically to stop those body and head kicks so that he could land that outside leg kick time and time again on Sean O'Malley. So I thought it was a very, very good tactic, very, very good game plan. It just didn't get to play itself out to see whether it was going to be something that can push him over the finish line and getting a win over Sean O'Malley. Frustrating for Sean O'Malley, frustrating for Pedro, frustrating for the fans. And what are they going to do? Run it back again? Well, I kind of hope so. I think there was enough in that fight to perhaps want to see it again, go to completion. Okay. I think Sean O'Malley would be the one that will come in with a different game plan. I think Pedro Munhoz, being that he's shorter and giving away reach advantage and somewhat of speed, I think he's limited with his game plan application against Sean O'Malley. But I think Sean O'Malley, knowing that Pedro Munhoz is going to have to pretty much do the same thing, he could plan for him better. So I don't think it'll be as an effective second performance for Pedro than it was the first time around. So I think that falls in Sean O'Malley's favour, to be honest. But
do you think Sean O'Malley comes in with a more aggressive attitude the next time, and he maybe gave Munhoz a bit too much respect?
Yeah, I just think I always say this, if you don't use your leg, you lose your leg. And the one that's going to predominantly be target is the one that's forward, right? It's the closest one to the person. I think he'll be switching a whole lot more and actually using that leg kick before coming in over the top of his hands. I think that would be good strategy. And I think Pedro Munhoz, if he was going to face him again, would have to incorporate still the threat of those kicks and perhaps use big cluster shots with his hands to try to access and shoot in at O'Malley's knees and hips, to try to smother the striking out of him, perhaps try to make him wrestle up a little bit and try and take some of that speed out of his game. Not an easy conquest. I'd say more so not an easy conquest facing Sean O'Malley a second time. For the reasons that I stated, really, for strategy and tactics, I think it's much more limited for Pedro Munhoz. And I think Sean O'Malley's got all the skill sets to make the adaptive changes. Now he knows what to expect for second time around, showing that he could be more effective. And I think Sean O'Malley would make short work of Pedro Munhoz second time around if he proves to be the intelligent fighter he appears to be.
Interesting. Next up was Brian Barberena defeating Robbie Lawler via a TKO, 4 minutes 47 into the second round.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Robbie Lawler looking fantastic in aspects of that fight. Largely, all the fight up until the end part of the scenario. Brian Barberena, we know how good he is. We saw him fight, the fight beforehand, performing brilliantly, showing really good striking. Tough as they come, really is. And there were times when he was receiving a little harder blows than he was able to put back on Robbie Lawler. But Lawler was just staying in the pocket, showing some great defense. But when the pace got pushed to anything resembling a sprint, you saw the aging Lawler not be able to keep up. And I think a lot of that staggering was not just the effect of being hit by Brian Barberena. I think it was the exhaustion on no longer to hold form. And this is where, and I think the fatigue is literally an age-related issue. Look, the man's 40 years old. You're never going to be able to run stride for stride with a man, 5 years your junior at that age. You can still say you're hanging on to some form of peak at 35, but really hitting 40, and this is why you don't see as many 40 plus fighters being effective, because
Sure.
at that lighter weight, they're quicker. They can go a larger canter in these combinations. So you will see light heavyweights and heavyweights go on a little longer, but the actual MMA fight itself is strategically different. They're bigger guys. It's just a different form of MMA. You can't tell me an MMA bout between two heavyweights is anything near the same as two bantamweights, as an example. It's very, very different. And I think this is just where Lawler come unstuck. The pace started to really, really pick up, and he tried to keep up. I think he was actually feeling really good in there. And as the pace picked up, he tried to stay with it. And suddenly he's like, oh, hang on, I'm fatiguing here. And then that tight defense that he was showing, that very, very tight, active defense that he was showing, suddenly fell apart. He started not to be able to keep up with the pace. I think he would have been better to back off out and try to keep that pace where he was being effective. But he tried to run with a younger kid, and he got found out, unfortunately. Look, I love watching Robbie Lawler. He's another guy that's been fantastic for the sport, but I think it's within the best interest of his health and his fight record and his legacy to perhaps hang up his gloves.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're not wrong, I would say. Similar to Donald Cerrone, I think they just look like they're struggling to keep up or compete with the high level younger guys, and that's no disrespect to anything with them. It's just a fact of life, like you say. These guys are younger, they're very, very skilled, very skilled fighters, and if you're fighting your age and your body as well as fighting these killers, it's hard, mate.
It is hard. MMA is getting to a point where it's a margin of inches. You've got to micromanage your game, but your game becomes so much more limited when you add the factor of limitation of age. I mean, all that happened in that fight was there was a part where they both flurried together, and it was Robbie Lawler that got exposed in it. He started to look tired all of a sudden. And that's what it's going to present itself and show itself as a weakness in your game. I think it was really Robbie Lawler was feeling great in there, and he started to open up, and then suddenly felt the fatigue and got clobbered a few times, and then just all fell apart very, very quickly, wasn't it? It's like a house of cards. When one thing fractures, the whole thing tumbles, and it tumbled very quickly for him. It was sad to see, but I'm also happy that he did put on a great performance up until then. I just don't want to see this happen to him again. I think he's better than that. And I think he should, like I say, hang up those gloves gracefully and say, you know what, I've done a lot of good for this sport, and then do justice for his career by getting out at the right time. And I think now's the right time.
Fair shout, mate. Next up, we had Alex Pereira defeating the controversial Sean Strickland via a knockout punch.
Look, two very, very good strikers, very, very different strikers. Pereira likes to be long and explosive. Strickland likes to push close and just pour on you. He almost has a Nate and Nick Diaz style. But something about Sean Strickland, which I have said before, he stands very, very upright. There's hardly any head movement, and he's got away with that for so long. He really has. But it was a matter of time, as far as I'm concerned, before someone's going to hit accurately enough and powerful enough to expose that high position, pushing close. Now, if you're going to go into pocket, you have to crouch down a little bit more. You have to sit down on your shots a little bit more. He was so upright, and it was inevitable it was going to happen at some point. He could have got away with it again in that fight, in which case it will happen another fight down the line. To me, in this level of MMA, you're going to get exposed by standing upright, having your head smack bang on the center so high up like that. It's just not the right way to be, as far as I'm concerned, of doing high level competitive MMA striking. But hats off to Pereira. Look, he's doing what he does to everyone. He's really becoming a contender for the higher ranks. But fair play to Strickland, because Pereira's a lot lower ranked, isn't he? He's not up there. So fair play to Strickland for taking that risk and taking the fight on, in which case, he fell on his face with it. But I respect him to take on that bout no matter what. Anyways, yeah, back to drawing board for him. I just hope he makes changes, because I feel that he has to, as he moves up the ranks, he's going to have to make those changes.
Sure, mate. So what was it? Next up was Alexander Volkanovski destroyed the in-form Max Holloway, number one contender. This wasn't even close, mate, was it?
No, it wasn't. I think this is a combination of Max Holloway not being at his best. I think there could be, I could be accusing him of things here that maybe are not true, but I think largely he's been getting hit more than ever since he made that claim that he don't spar anymore. And if that is the case, then, I'd say, that's showing itself now. He was doing a few things that I don't like regards striking defense. He has his hands facing forwards, which leaves you more open. And he had his elbows extended from his body as well. This just doesn't sit good as a good strategy for me. It's almost like his striking has become complacent, not in his delivery, but in his reception of strikes coming in. Volkanovski comes with some difficulties as well, to try to overcome. He's a man that's shorter than many in that weight division, but has a longer reach than many. And it's an unusual composition, but he's also very, very strong wrestler. He's physically very strong. He's got very good wrestling capabilities. So he can also crash line. And when I say crash line, he can, either play the distance game with that stepping in, jab, stepping out, or he can crash in, trade off a few strikes, either come off better, or if he feels he ain't coming off better, just clinch up. And that's what we saw. We saw this rhythm of him either jabbing Max Holloway, doing a flurry and backing Holloway up, or doing a flurry and clinching up with him and spoiling any potential return. Max Holloway looks out of answers. Volkanovski, I think, being 3 times that he's faced Max Holloway now, I don't think it matters what Max Holloway does. Volkanovski is in a position, as long as he stays champion, to say, no, look, I think the job's done between me and you, and just fight anyone else that surround him in that division. Volkanovski is proving to be one of the best champions of all time. I think he really is showing that. And partly I'm saying that because that division is one hell of a stacked division. And he's just showing such utter dominance. He really, really is. I can't see anyone beating him while he's in this form.
So I saw that him and Henry Cejudo had a conversation afterwards. And Henry Cejudo says, basically, I don't mean any disrespect to you. I want to fight you for your title so I can try and do something that's never been done before.
Right.
And be a 3-weight champion, basically. However, I'm telling you now, if they do that fight, then Conor McGregor will fight for the lightweight title or whatever. Before they do that fight, because they won't allow Henry Cejudo, like the UFC and Dana White will not allow Henry Cejudo to be a 3-weight champion before Conor McGregor, because they're not big fans of Henry.
Right.
He's been quite outspoken.
Yeah. But
I also
maybe
Volkanovski would destroy him, mate. By the way, but
I think it is a step too far. Firstly, because of the size difference, and secondly, because Cejudo's had time out now. If he did put it off, I wouldn't be as surprised as someone else pulling it off, because the guy was an absolute incredible athlete, very, very dominant as well. But how about if they put both those bouts on in one night? To perhaps have 2 people do something that's never been done
on the same night.
Yeah. I mean, that's a possibility. I'll leave that for UFC to decide. I mean, it's food for thought, isn't it? But with the way UFC is in so many divisions, there's food for thought in every one of them. UFC just is not boring, and it hasn't been for a long time. I'm literally loving it. I mean, it's almost you're almost hard pushed to be able to put on a bad show. I mean, it's a fight picker's heaven, UFC right now. It's a fight picker's heaven. It really is.
I want to talk to you. I want to get your take on something in a minute. But before we sort of move to that, I would like to get your take on the main event between Israel Adesanya and Jared Kanye, which went to a decision with Israel Adesanya picking up the victory. Rightly so, I think. But what did you think of the fight overall?
Yeah, Jared showed some potential to try to do something to Adesanya, but Adesanya just slightly adjusted each round and become slowly more dominant. And that's when I started to realise Jared just wasn't going to be able to do enough to take Adesanya out. I think if Jared was going to do any kind of inroads to really threaten Israel, it was to do it in the first 2 rounds to get Adesanya out of sync. But Adesanya is just so good at figuring people out and then applying the needed skills to break someone apart over time. And 5 rounds is just a perfect situation to figure someone out with. He's so patient, so rangy, so aware. And even though I don't think he's the world's greatest defensive wrestler, in MMA he is, because of that distance management. You know, they're shooting in so far out that, you know, he's getting himself well placed to shrug off the drive phase of a takedown. And this is the thing, you're seeing people shoot and get a touch on him, but they ain't able to run through on a drive phase. And that's because of the range management. Yeah, in that division, you know, is another one that's, you know, who can you put up against him to beat him at his weight? I mean, he's only left with the challenge to move up a rate. And I think that just takes away too many of his strengths, being taller, more rangy, being sharper, being faster. You know, I think these heavier guys can walk through that a little bit more. So I just don't think he can be effective at the weight up. All he can do is just foment that legacy and try to go with one of the biggest winning streaks as a champion. I think that's a real possibility for him in that weight division. Yeah, it's just so impressive. But look, let's not take anything away from Jared. You know, he was absolutely deserving of his attempt at Adesanya. And I think there were moments when it looked like, he's breaking through. But like I say, Israel Adesanya just made micro adjustments and took away any of that success away from him. So it wasn't there a second or third time. I'm impressed. And you know, and Israel Adesanya, although I've not been always a fan of him, I'm warming to him. You know, he just seems to show some respect at the end of it and so on. He's proven to be, you know, a very good man as well as a very good fighter, and I respect him that, and I'm becoming a big fan of his the more I see of him.
What do you say to the people who being a bit critical of him by saying when John Jones was in this division, he was destroying everyone in his path comfortably and you know, in emphatic style, whereas Israel Adesanya is basically, you know, outpointing them. Do you think there's any criticism to be had there that he's not aggressive enough in terms of how he goes? Like, he doesn't get enough finishes, maybe?
No.
Is that fair criticism?
No. Look, this man's trying to make money by keeping his health. I think it's Mayweather that always says, you know, about money and wealth. Wealth and health. You know, your health is more important than any kind of wealth. And I think he's put himself in a position where he can get these wins in a way that he doesn't have to be put into these wars. But the unfortunate process on trying to move yourself into a position, you both need wins and you need to be exciting. But he's got past that. He's the champion now. He's doing enough to win. It wasn't like this fight was close. He just wasn't running through the guy and stopping him. Has he got the capabilities to? Yes, but then he puts himself at risk of being put into a dogfight. You know, he didn't need to do it. I kind of see the position Israel Adesanya is in is kind of like being a superior runner to anyone else in the 1,500 meters or 3,000 meters. You know, every run he could be put under pressure by the people expecting fast times to not just beat everyone, but get close to or reset a new world record every time. Or he could just do enough to win and enjoy a longer career as a runner and let those fast times come as and when he feels that he wants to do them. I think like Israel Adesanya is in that exact same position. You know, yes, he could try to sprint and put these guys out at any time in those 5.5s, but he just doesn't have to push himself that hard. He doesn't need to do it. So we can't be hard on the man for working hard to get to a position where he can do enough to win the fight. I mean, it still wasn't boring. It still wasn't boring.
No.
But look, winning an MMA bout ain't just about submissions or knockouts or submission. It ain't just about that. It's about tactic, strategy. It's about getting ahead, staying ahead in the rounds, and he does it, and he does it very, very well.
Here's a question for you then. Would you rather see John Jones versus Israel Adesanya, or would you rather see John Jones versus, Stipe or Francis Ngannou, someone like that, who've been ruined? They've been the two that he's rumored to fight.
I'd rather see him. I'll see him up against Ngannou. Because like Israel Adesanya, he showed that he's not going to be effective up against the bigger guys, and John Jones is a bigger guy.
Yeah,
he's got to match him in height. He's got great wrestling capabilities, and he's got to be a bigger man now that he's older. I just think it takes too many of Israel Adesanya's strengths. I think John Jones wins every time with this one. I just think that's just how I see it.
Can I ask you a question, mate? If John Jones goes into the heavyweight division and beats Stipe and Francis Ngannou handily, does that put him back into the shout for the best ever, despite his out of the cage issues?
Yeah, I mean, it's out of cage issues are always going to create some kind of shadow. Some people overlook those shadows, some people won't. And so you will get people voicing the opinion that he's been the greatest ever. For me, maybe not. I think there's been other more impressive MMA fighters out there, to be honest. I like the fighters that have had to show the skill in absolutely every arena of an MMA bout. Have had to show scramble up skills, had to show submission skills, had to show knockout capabilities and survival capabilities. I think someone like GSP is someone that's showed something in every part of the avenue of an MMA bout. I'm not so sure that we've seen that with John Jones. Have we really seen John Jones get out wrestled and have to scramble up? We haven't really seen that.
Because he was so much better than everyone, though.
Well, yeah, you can argue that, but like I say, for me, no, you can't. And it's the same with Adesanya. I mean, Adesanya's far from the greatest grappler, but his range management with his striking has just not allowed anyone to get him into the situation of a grappling. Until he fought Buth-Chick, he was the only person to do it because he stepped up in weight and he was put on his back, and we saw how short his skill set was in the grappling. But we're talking about someone being the greatest ever in MMA. For me personally, MMA, you have to show that you had capabilities to deal with every scenario when pushed deep in every scenario. So you get pushed into deep waters regards the grappling aspect. You're on your back, you're receiving ground and pound, and you find ways of getting back up or sweeping, getting on top, submitting off your back. And showing takedown capabilities when you're really up against it on the feet, or when you're really up against someone who could really grapple you up, showing some great takedown defense. I think GSP is someone that proved something in every scenario. I think GSP biggest weakness was the fact that he showed the fight on his face all too easily, and I don't think he had the world's greatest chin. But I think we have seen someone to date who's been the most smartest, innovative, smart fighters of modern times, and you will get someone else, don't get me wrong, but it's going to be hard to stand out like that in the modern day arena because everyone's so well rounded. But yeah, I can't say I've seen that with John Jones. I can't. That's just a personal opinion. But has he done great things? Has he looked dominant? My God, of course he has. Yes, he has. But has he tainted it? Like I say, for me, yeah, he has tainted with his outside antics. He has tainted his respect regards what he has done in the cage. But I'm not a delusional guy. I know he's done great things, and hats off to him for the things that he has done.
Oh, mate, I wanted to ask you about this. A couple of weeks back, Jack Shaw's fighting, I think it's New York or Vegas, was announced. He was on the main card. Everyone universally from the MMA community said he deserves that fight. He deserves a fight in America on the main card. That is the right thing to do because of his record, his performances. UFC London, he performed under adversity. This week, they removed him from the
Oh, I didn't know this.
main card and put him back onto the prelims. Richard Shaw, his coach and father, put a tweet out saying, "Is Jack Shaw the most underappreciated UFC fighter?" I can't remember if he said in the UK or in the company. He might have said the company overall. And there's literally, I think it's hundreds of replies where people are like, "Yep." Do you think he doesn't get the credit he deserved because he is respectful? He doesn't get on the mic and F and blind and criticize people and start fights outside the cage. He's a gentleman, he's a man, but he does his talking in the cage. And by the way, that fight against Ricky Simone should be on the main card because it's an absolute belter of a fight.
Yeah, it does make you feel that unless you're good on the mic and going to ruffle someone's feathers up and say something disrespectful to your opponent, that you're not getting the exposure you deserve. But look, if I was Jack Shaw, being as young as he is and talented as he is, I would just sit tight because his voice will be heard from the cage, and I don't mean his verbal voice, in the form of actions. I just want him to keep his head down, keep getting the wins, and force UFC to give him recognition. But, in answer to your question, yes, it does seem a little funny how that he ain't getting the exposure that he clearly has deserved a few fights ago, let alone right now. Richard Shaw being, obviously he's the father. He's going to be more passionate than anyone else. He's going to be Jack Shaw's biggest fan. And I'm not sure, I'm sure, this has ruffled him up and displeased him since he's posted about it.
Of course. Here's another question then, which follows on from a conversation we had last week with regards to kind of Graham Boylan and the fighters that he manages within the UFC system once they leave Cage Warriors. I think, so we'll say hypothetically, I think he is Jack Shaw's manager, but hypothetically, say he's Jack Shaw's manager and he's also Paddy the Baddy's manager. Why is one getting exposure and one not, despite being 16-0?
Yeah. I mean, you could only put it down to that. Sometimes I think promotions at the top of the game, Bellator, UFCs, and promotions like that, it's also seen as an entertainment business.
But Jack Shaw is entertaining in the cage. Like I
yes,
get people might not buy in, like they might think he's a bit too quiet or polite or whatever outside of the cage. But lots of fighters over the years have been respectful and still got respect. It just feels like he doesn't get the respect that he deserves. They do get it, and when they've got it, they normally don't ever lose it because they're good individuals that stay consistent. Jack Shaw is definitely someone that's just going to stay consistent. He's not going to suddenly start grabbing the mic and acting out of character and trying to adhere to what he thinks the promotion or people want from him. He should just want and need for what he needs for himself, which is just to put in good performances and keep getting winning. Like, to me, you don't have to be someone that's just good on the mic and willing to be disrespectful to someone. His time will come, and I understand their frustration. I don't think they should overly focus on it. I don't think they should bring too much attention from it, because I'd hate that to put Jack under unnecessary pressure. I'd just say, stay quiet. Your time will come. Just keep getting those wins. I think he's a fantastic lad with incredible abilities, and I think he should just let everything of his talking to be done with his performances. I think just stay true to that, and it will all come good. But in hindsight of the question in its entirety, yes, it does seem like something a little untoward's happening, and it feels and seems a little unfair. But the business game of entertainment, being it's a combat sport as well as entertainment, some fighters will get bigger opportunities because they're also really, really good at grabbing that mic and talking some shit. And also their performances are more electrifying and more risky. You can't argue that Paddy the Baddy hasn't had
two performances that see him getting rocked slightly before he turns it around and pulls off the win. I mean, that is what we've seen of him, and that can seem really exciting. I don't know. I can only give my opinion on it. I don't know what's truly right or wrong with it.
It's an interesting sort of it's an interesting conundrum, because I think in some ways Jack Shaw is better just flying under the radar, and he can just keep moving up the rankings quietly. And before you know it, he'll be like Leon Edwards, and he'll be undeniable then. Because
Because I was going to mention
top 5 or top 3,
and
then suddenly it's like, well, you don't give me respect, I'll take it, and I'll beat
everyone.
And, it's that side of it. And if you draw, like you said, if you draw attention to it too much, it almost works against you.
But, exactly that.
I would have thought, I don't know, I can't remember when Jack, I think he signed a new contract fairly back in the last year or so. I wondered whether his contract was perhaps due up after this fight, and maybe there was some negotiations going on, but seems that he's already signed his sort of second deal, if you like. I've got no doubt. I think people are looking forward to his fight with Ricky Simone, and I think people might be in for a bit of a shock, thinking that Ricky Simone is going to kind of walk through Jack, if they like, or if it's going to be like an easy fight, because there's nothing. I've never seen anyone or any, like, Jack has never really been in trouble other than that last fight for a minute, and the way he handled that was quite scary in a way, because for me watching it, I was like getting all, oh God, I know he's gonna finally lose. But when you look at him, when you watch it back, at no point did he panic.
No,
it was just, I'm gonna see out the round, and there we go.
These competitors at the top of the game like that, and I include Jack in this, that they're not normal individuals largely, for all different reasons, but they're not normal individuals. These people can perform under extreme pressure and can still make good decisions under extreme pressure, and with things that are happening fast, particularly in his division. Things happen very, very quickly. He has a very, very good reaction to situations as they unfold during the milliseconds, and then also makes good long-term investments within the fight. He just knows what to do. He's got like a more mature head on the shoulders than his face shows. He's such a young man, and he's got that on his side. That whole age thing, he's got it on his side. And even if he has a loss at some point, he's so young. He's just going to develop from it.
How young he is, but he's that young, and he's sort of 13-0, and looks fantastic. And like even Ricky Simone is going to be a difficult fight, and I think not easy. It's going to be a fascinating one.
Yeah, but I've got every bit of faith that Jack can pull it off, and I don't see him as an underdog in the fight at all.
No, I think the same. So we've got some fights next week. Rafael Dos Anjos fights Rafael Fiziev. Who do you think is going to win that?
I think if there's going to be a finish, I think it'll be Fiziev that will pull off a finish. But I think I'm going to put my money towards Dos Anjos. I just think he could grind this one out to a decision win.
Good shout. See if there's any other fights I fancy talking about on there. Saeed Nurmagomedov is fighting Douglas Silva DeAndre. So Saeed is the gentleman, or the member of the Nurmagomedov family he's not unbeaten. He's lost a couple. He's 15-2, fighting at bantamweight. Isn't he the one that's been avoiding Jack Shaw?
I think that's been mentioned. That's been mentioned. Yeah,
twice they've been set to fight. He's found had a reason, should we say? Hasn't found a reason. To avoid it. So it'll be interesting how that goes. Douglas and Silva and DeAndre is 28-4 with one no contest. Do you predict a Saeed victory for that one, mate?
Yeah, it's really hard to know. You can't help but steer towards him for the victory, but I don't think it's a guarantee by any stretch with that one, and particularly with this type of weight division as well.
Yeah, that bantamweight division is mental.
It is mental. I think you could say skill for skill, which you naturally get as you go lighter. They do become more agile, skillful, and they do have bigger combinations of strikes and takedowns and grapple exchanges. They really do, and it does become harder to predict. So I truly just don't know. I literally don't know. If I was betting on fights, I wouldn't put a bet on it.
Yeah,
I just wouldn't. I think that's just a dodgy division to put money down on any of the fighters.
Yeah, it's one of those difficult ones to predict.
Yeah,
I think, isn't it? So that kind of rounds us up for the week, mate. Really enjoyed tonight, mate. Really,
yes, me too.
Good one. Thanks to Kate Bacik for joining us. Please do check out yourheights.com. Use the code ACE Nation, and violetmoney.co.uk. Use the code ACE20. I have to remember them because they're two different codes. Look out on social media. I'm taking a break from stuff for a bit, but we are hoping that Danny and another co-host will be back next week. But check out our social media for updates on that, and I will see you all very soon. Hopefully Danny will see you next week, but as always, thank you for watching, listening. Take care. God bless. Nostar, Danny. Do you know what that means?
No, tell me.
It's Welsh for good night.
Okay, good night. I won't try to pronounce that back, but good night.
Nostar.
And I will see you again on here at some point. So I have no doubt that you enjoy your little break, and we look forward to having you back as and when it suits you to. Yeah, it's been good tonight. Really enjoyed it.
Top man. Nostar.